We went there to stop Al-Qaeda and their affiliates from conducting terrorist operations against the West, as we saw in 9/11. Were we successful? Yes, we were. We had 20 years where we broke up those networks. There was no repeat of 9/11. Have the events of the last week made us less safe? I think probably.
The emergency meeting has been going on all morning. It's finishing at 5 o'clock. Oh, I believe we do have Tom now. So, Tom, just explain to us then how the perception is from MPs watching. I know you're with Liam Fox.
That's right. This is the first full chamber that we've seen in about 16 to 18 months, really. There's an atmosphere in the House of Commons that really hasn't existed for a very long time, and some very, very powerful speeches that we've heard today so far as well. I'm with, of course, former Defence Secretary Liam Fox, who spoke around an hour ago in the House of Commons chamber. And what was the message that you wanted to get across to the government today?
That I think that the situation in Afghanistan is a tragedy, backlit by defeat, as I said. I think that we have now got a situation where our enemies, 5,000 of them to be particular, have escaped from Bagram prison or been released from Bagram prison by the Taliban. They are the most aggressive, most determined, most vicious enemies of the West. They will look for their moment. How are we going to respond to the new security situation? And of course, we all know about the refugee picture that's emerging at the present time. It's all done in an environment where the Taliban have learned how to manipulate the media by getting their press conferences to make them sound milder than they are, and at the same time they're going house to house, hunting down their enemies and seeking victims. It's altogether a tragic picture.
There's been a lot of criticism in the chamber from both sides of the Commons of President Biden. Is the US-UK relationship a weaker one today?
No, but I think the alliance overall is weaker because I think that the strategic defeat in Afghanistan and the re-emergence of the Taliban, which was the very reason we went there in the first place, to stop the incubation of Al-Qaeda and similar groups. I think that weakness will have been noticed not just by the Taliban in Kabul, but in Moscow and Beijing, and also probably in Tehran and Islamabad.
Those three capital cities you just mentioned of Russia, China and of course Iran are the three countries that have been siding up to the Taliban, have been indicating they'll recognise the Taliban. Is Afghanistan now becoming the centre of a very dangerous region?
Well, Afghanistan, you could argue, has been that for a long way, ever since the so-called Great Game. Afghanistan's been the centre of that. But it's very clear that Russia and China in particular sense a weakness in the West. They sense a weakness in the United States and will be trying to get as much advantage as they can from that. They are not our friends. They have a different strategic view of the world. They want to make the world a happier place for totalitarianism. We need to make it a happier place for democracy. We do not do that by the sort of actions we've had in the last week.
We heard the NATO Secretary General in a press conference yesterday feeling as if he wasn't really in control of the situation. It was sort of following what the Americans did. What can be done to strengthen NATO as an organisation?
Well, our NATO allies could start by spending some money. Only 3 NATO countries currently spend above the 2% that they promised to spend. Ourselves and the Americans are 2 of them. And there's no point in European leaders bleating about the fact that they're having to follow America's coattails when they themselves will not pay any money to build up a security and defence apparatus. And of course, the more they want to have high-spending big states in Europe and get Americans to pay for their defence, the more they'll become dependent on America, not less. Maybe it's time they woke up to that reality.
That's a stark message. And just finally, you mentioned this in a piece in Conservative Home this morning. You touched on whether or not the whole exercise in Afghanistan has been a success or a failure. What has been gained of all the blood and all the treasure that has been spilt? Do you think we'll look back at this time with a sense of regret, or are there some points of light?
Well, the point I was making in the Commons earlier was we went there to stop Al-Qaeda and their affiliates from conducting terrorist operations against the West, as we saw in 9/11. Were we successful? Yes, we were. We had 20 years where we broke up those networks. There was no repeat of 9/11. Have the events of the last week made us less safe? I think probably. That's a new situation that we'll have to take into account. But in terms of did we stop Al-Qaeda? Yes. Did we prevent attacks on the West? Yes. Did we help the people of Afghanistan have a chance at a better life? Yes. So those who say it was all in vain, I think, have failed to utterly failed to understand the gains that we've made in both security and quality of life in the past 2 decades.
Liam Fox, thank you very much for being with us on GB News this afternoon. So this has, of course, been an extraordinary session in the House of Commons. We've seen many speeches from many members of Parliament and heartfelt feeling as well, not just on the geopolitical strategy that the UK must now embark upon, but also very personal and human stories as well have been touched upon throughout this debate.
They have, and we're going to do some more of that on GB News today. Tom Harwood, thank you very much, our political correspondent in the lobby.